How to create an ADHD-friendly workspace or desk setup or office space. This is exactly what we're going to talk about today. As an ADHD therapist in New York City, I work with people every day dealing with ADHD. And one thing that we often talk about is the physical environment. And a lot of people are working and they have workspaces or desk setups, whether they're doing work or school. And that environment can actually cause a lot of issues, right? Now, one thing I find is that people end up setting up a space based around the person they want to be versus the person they actually are, causing a lot of friction and issues with the space and leading to a lot of difficulties. Using myself as an example, I am someone who is, I like the idea of minimalism. I try my best to have that in my space. And at one point, I tried to make my desk so minimal that all I had on it was a laptop. I refused to get an external monitor. I refused to get that thing that the laptop stands on to help my posture and support. I didn't want anything in my drawers. I wanted everything put away on shelves. And although when you looked in, the desk looked very nice and clean and minimal, every single day this was causing problems. I couldn't find anything. I had to stand up all the time. My neck was hurting. The space just wasn't working for my day-to-day needs, nor was it working for my personality, right? I'm someone who needs a lot of stuff to make these videos, to work on my stuff. And so I just need things accessible, and it might not be clean, but I need them within arm's reach. It just makes my day more efficient and easier. And that's just a small example. But today, this video is specifically for those of you dealing with ADHD. And like anything else, without further ado, we're going to dive right. So let's just dive in. I'm going to share my notes with you, and we're going to talk about creating a space, workspace that's for ADHD friendly. All right. Number one, let's just do the intro. Actually, that's blank. We just did that. All right. We did the intro. We did the personal story, my own office space, right? So the first thing we actually have to think about is the issues people have when it comes to ADHD, right? Is a lot of executive function issues. That's largely what ADHD impacts, executive functions. And some of those major executive functions we're taking into account are right here, right? So time management, procrastination is an issue, prioritization is an issue, organization. Sometimes I often find that there are two camps people are in with ADHD. One, people are super organized. It's a compensation mechanism. And then other times it's totally not organized. It's kind of chaotic. So we'll add that one in there. And then forgetfulness. So this is a common one that people are often dealing with, right? Short-term memory, not remembering what they have to do, this kind of thing. So we want to, when we're designing a space or kind of curating the space around us, we start by thinking about the issues that we have or the person that we are, right? This kind of thing. And because this is focused on ADHD, I know these are major issues people are dealing with. So we're going to keep these in mind when creating the space. Right? So let's actually start there. So strategy number one, we're going to account for time management issues. All right. So what we want is an external clock or timer, preferably pretty big, pretty bright. I'd like two functions on it, a clock that you can see, right? Digital, analog, doesn't really matter. But I also wanted to have a timer, right? So you can set a time for 20 minutes or 60 minutes. And I want it to have sounds, right? So I want it to beep or ring. I don't care what it does, but it also needs to have an audible, an auditory function. All right. So we need an external clock or timer. When it comes to ADHD, it's very hard to gauge the passage of time internally. So we need something external to help us gauge the passage of time. Nothing better. There's not much better than a clock. Okay. Now we want that clock to be positioned somewhere we can see it and it's hard to miss. Okay. Now, again, that might go against your aesthetic preferences, but it would help in the long run if time management or gauging the passage of time is helpful. So maybe it needs to take center stage on your wall because it will help you keep track of time as opposed to the artwork that you love. Okay. So those are some of the things we have to keep in mind. And I think when we're designing our space, just to have having a clock in there, right? That's it. It's not mind blowing. I think that'll be really, really helpful. Have it reach. I want you to be able to reach it too, right? Maybe it's reachable or voice command, whatever kind of clock you want. But that will help our space, number one, okay? Moving on. Strategy number two, procrastination. So this is a major issue. We're gonna need to, and now one caveat is for a lot of these, we can get digital tools, right? We can get software and apps and all sorts of stuff. In this video, I wanted to focus more on kind of the non-tech related stuff. So things you can actually purchase or have that are tangible, okay? So with this one, I would think about a whiteboard. Now, the reason why is because procrastination largely has to do with not knowing or not knowing exactly where to start. So we might have a big work project, right, that's due in 3 months, and we have to give a report about our quarter or whatever the case may be. But the exact starting point is sometimes hard. And so people end up procrastinating. Now, we can dive a little bit deeper into the motivational issues around procrastination and all that. But I do find that if I'm able to help clients break things down into smaller steps, we often have a little bit more momentum to get going. A great way to do that is with a whiteboard. So we're able to just put the big concept out there, and then and the first task in getting started should be breaking it down into smaller tasks. And so then that whiteboard not only gives us a place to kind of brainstorm and brain dump and get a bit of a task list going, but it also helps us see it, and we can keep it there. And again, it's visible. Hopefully it's in our, we're able to see it clearly. And again, it externalizes, right, all of that executive function outside. And so then, it's that's one of the keys, because with ADHD, the external functions are, they're if you look at the research, they're impaired. So this is why we want that externalization of the executive functions. A whiteboard is a great way to help with procrastination. Okay. Now, again, I know not all of these are surefire ways, right? These are strategies that we can try. All right. Number 3, prioritization. So with people with ADHD, right, it's hard to prioritize for anyone, really, right? But when it comes to ADHD, it can be particularly hard. So which one do I do first? Which one's more important? Which one's less important? Sometimes there's obvious things, right? Maybe we have a deadline tomorrow, but there's something due 2 weeks from now, right? Other times it's a little more challenging, because sometimes, people can get a little bit impulsive. So maybe started watching a show, but I have a deadline for something tomorrow, right? And again, we kind of have some of that playing into it as well. But prioritization, nonetheless, tends to be an issue. So a couple of things we could do in our space to really work on this is displaying our prioritization criteria. People don't often think about this, but you have to have a system and a framework through which you prioritize your different tasks, okay? And ideally, I want that externalized. Maybe it's on a poster, maybe it's on the whiteboard. Now, an example of this would be something like the Eisenhower matrix, right? Based off of the former president, who apparently was very, very efficient. He had a system to determine which things he should work on at what time. Right, now you can look up the Eisenhower matrix and see if that would work for you. But at the end of the day, what it is just a set of criteria or a system that you run a task through to determine how important it is and when you should do it. Right, and that system could be complex. It could be really simple. It could just be based on due dates or whatever the case may be. When it comes to the Eisenhower matrix, the way he did it was there was like urgency was one of the things, and importance. Okay, urgency was deadline, and then importance was slightly subjective. And then he would say if things are urgent and important, we should do them right away, right? If something is not urgent but important, you put it on your calendar, so on and so forth. Nonetheless, he had a criteria. And so a lot of people don't think about that. So I want you to think about the criteria. Number 1, you can use the Eisenhower matrix, and then post that criteria somewhere visibly, which will help you remember to run things through the criteria, okay? The other way we can do, or in addition to this, we would want a calendar or a Kanban board. That's kind of like one of those boards where you can kind of move tasks across the pipeline, if you will, right? So maybe one column is not started, another column's in progress, another column's completed, and you can move it across. There's a lot of digital Kanban boards, but you can use you could use a Post-it note and a whiteboard. You can use a bulletin board or whatever you want to do. But this will then take the priorities you have and put them on a pipeline, and you can kind of move them along. So this helps really well also. Okay. And then number 4, organization. So let's talk about that a little bit. So this is going to be, okay, so let's explain this a little bit. So number 1, I would get a label maker, or have some way of labeling the homes for your different objects and your different things, right? I think a lot of times we forget where we put things or where we've organized them. If everything is labeled, even if it feels weird, right? So maybe in the drawer, it says desk items, right? On the shelf, you have a box, it lists off what's in the box, right? Often we only have to do this once. It's a little tedious, but once we do it, we then can, if we forget where it is, we can read our labels and find things a little bit quicker. Now, I say designate a place for everything. Again, this is not based off aesthetic preferences or what looks the best. It's based on what you need to get done. So for example, I film a lot of videos. Ideally, I'd like all my camera gear put away in neat drawers and organized. But in reality, I need to reach for things, right? I need to be able to pick up the microphone. I need to be able to pick up the camera. So it doesn't look very good, but the home for these things is like on the edges of my desk where I can simply reach for it and grab it. That's where they live and that's where they go back to. So spending time finding a home for the different objects and items in your workspace that you need often can be really, really helpful. One of the frameworks we also want to, or the foundations you want to think about is this concept of reducing friction. So there's no need to make things harder. So for me, if I had a camera that was stored away in a box every day, although it looked better, we're creating more friction. It's hard to stand up, reach, grab it, pull it out, put it back. But if it's right here on the edge of my desk, I grab it. So reducing friction is one of the things you always want to be striving towards, right? And it's reducing friction between you and the things you need to accomplish. So maybe you're someone who has to write a lot of reports. Make it really easy to access your keyboard and write the report. Maybe you're someone who needs to look through a lot of different files. Make sure the files are accessible and very easy to get. These are just some thoughts I had about that, right? But reducing friction. And the other thing is you want to make things easy to reach and hard to lose. All right, so think about that. Now, finally, this is a big one. This is forgetfulness. We're not going to think about anything too mind-blowing here, but when it comes to forgetfulness, essentially what we have to do is externalize our memory. So I always encourage people, get a pack of very bright colored sticky notes. When something comes across your mind or across your radar that you don't want to forget or you can't forget, write it on the sticky note and put it literally in the field of view. So maybe it's right on your monitor, maybe it's in the bathroom mirror, right near your office space. But Post-it notes that are very bright and in your face, like in your way, basically. So put it in the middle of the computer monitor before you leave, right? Put it right on the sink faucet when you wash your hands. These are things you won't miss and they kind of stand out, they're out of place. So it really helps externalize that memory. And then you can also use the whiteboard as well for this kind of purpose. Any of these things we could get accustomed to, and then we have to shake things up a little bit. There's no tool that lasts forever. So just keep that in mind as well. But you can use the whiteboard for backup, right? That kind of thing. So that's another good way of externalizing the forgetfulness. So there you have it. These are just 5 quick strategies that you can begin implementing in your workspace to create a more ADHD-friendly environment. I hope you found it helpful. Hope you learned something. If you're interested in working with our practice or want to know more about our approach and what we do, you can click the link down below to book a free call. We're happy to share with you a little bit more. All right. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video.